My name is Gregory French, and today we're going to look at the idea of seeing and seeing again. So this is going to be our main topic that we center our ideas around as we plan to expand on the ideas of leadership, creativity, imagination, and how this affects our personal, professional, and everyday lives in terms of seeing and seeing again. So one of the questions that I want to ask today is, do you consider yourself a creative person? And I think this is an interesting idea because a lot of people don't necessarily think about this in terms of themselves. But I plan to have a few different discussions with people today and center this around the idea of comparing people of different backgrounds, different professions, and look at their different perspectives and see how this affects the lens that they look at, how creativity is developed, and how that fits into their roles of leadership or even into their everyday lives from there too. On the idea of how creativity and leadership is rooted within different people, I want to take a look at how that affects people's approach to both their views and their actions regarding leadership and creativity. We'll be sure to relate this back to organizational leadership and how it ties in with everyday creativity, how we see the space around us, how we make sense of things, the principles that are important to us, and the processes that take place to get from one stage to the next, which will bring us all the way back to the idea of self-reflection. Essentially, we are looking to go for a sense of moral awareness, to personal reflection, to reflecting on new perspectives, and lastly, imagining new possibilities of what leadership and creativity can mean to us as individuals. The goal behind this will really relate fully back to the idea of how we see our own perspective through a new lens on a personal level, a group level, an organizational level, and finally in the world around us too. For me, I've always considered myself a fairly creative person, but that might mean something completely different to me than it does to somebody else. Even when thinking about this, it is still a little bit challenging to fully comprehend because, as mentioned before, I think it is difficult for a lot of people to wrap their mind around what that actually means on an individual level, too. So for a little bit of background on myself, I work for a small metal manufacturing company in western Pennsylvania, which is actually a little bit east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So my role within this company is multifaceted. I work for the most part within logistics and operations. I help in the purchasing side with steel that we bring in for various projects, keep track of production for jobs that are currently being worked on in the plant at the time, and then also logistically help ship it out once projects are finished and ready. It's been a very unique experience that allows me to develop as a leader personally and within the organization. My roles help combine a lot of different departments, which brings in aspects of relationship building, communication, and gives a strong background in task management and coordination with many different roles between departments at our organization. That's been a great experience for me, and I also try and stay involved outside of work to balance my creative outlets. I really enjoy staying active, and running has been a hobby of mine for a very long time, as it allows me to clear my head and think about where I'm at personally. This has also allowed me an opportunity to get further involved within the community around me too, where I volunteer at a local university with their track and field team. I'm an assistant coach with the university there and help work primarily with the hurdlers, which has given me a chance to share my own perspective and knowledge. It's been a great experience getting to teach and help these athletes work towards improving themselves, pushing their goals, and realizing what it means to be part of a team. This leadership helps each of them grow and realize what they are working on, what they're working towards, and also helps them become better leaders in the future too. This has allowed me to further expand my leadership capabilities and has given me an opportunity to better my own communication and interpersonal skills to better serve the athletes that I work with and work towards something bigger than myself. I think my goal is to give them a chance to learn new perspectives and ways of expressing themselves to help further develop skills that they will carry with them on and off the track. To support this goal, I've actually tried to implement a once-a-month discussion group with these athletes so that we can talk about their values, character, leadership, goals, and motivations. I think this is another way that I can help them develop and continue to keep an open mind to strive for continual learning and growth. This has helped me learn how to better relate to each of them and pass along skills and knowledge that I have acquired myself from past teachers and coaches. Now with these thoughts in mind, I want to share with you the conversations and discussions that I've had with various people regarding their views on leadership, creativity, imagination, and collaboration, and really just what it means to them as far as how they view it, express it, apply it, and practice it within their own lives too. So the idea behind these conversations was twofold. with each discussion, I really wanted to combine a sense of spontaneity and have a more conversation-style interview here so that we could really capture some creativity within each discussion and allow each person to kind of develop the conversation based on their own terms, their own unique experiences, and how they wanted to express their own views on each subject there too. So when we're candidly speaking, I think each person's ideas really come to life a little bit further because this projects more of a true sense of what it really means to each individual here too. So the second part was relating back to my time on campus at Gonzaga University for this organizational leadership program back in November because I really like the idea of having these conversations in class and letting each conversation further develop based on the experiences of people in the class and really just kind of letting it kind of take its own organic spin from there too. So it's very different than a lot of written work that I turned in before that's very proofread and thought out before anyone ever sees it. And I think each conversation having its own unique aspect of individual experiences really helps develop on the idea of seeing and seeing again as we see how different people take the ideas of creativity, leadership, and collaboration and further it with their own lives and their own unique experiences there too. So with that, we'll let each conversation develop from here and see what each person has to say and see what we can learn from them as well. So our first discussion is with Shirley Varico. She's from Buffalo, New York, and is very involved in the art scene in Buffalo, and has also created quite the career out of being an art museum curator, and has quite a strong background in both her undergrad and master's degree. So with that, I'll go ahead and let her take it from here, and let her describe her role, and we'll get plenty into how leadership creativity has played a role in her life, her career, and what that means further to her.
Shirley Varico, and my official title is curator at the Buffalo Art Studios. A curator, when I talk to people, I tell them to curate, it means to choose, and that's really what I do. I select the artwork and work with the artists to prepare exhibitions. I write and design and produce all of the supplemental material that supports exhibitions. I handle the PR and the marketing. And most importantly, probably the negotiation between the audience and the artwork and the artist. That's really the largest part of what I feel I do. I have a bachelor's degree in fine arts, a master's degree in arts and humanities, which is a program that allows you to study two fields within the humanities, and I chose to study art history and English. So those things all come together to prepare me for what I do now, and I've been working in the arts for 20 years, generally either in academia as an adjunct or full faculty art history instructor, or in some sort of arts administration capacity. I've worked as a program director, I've worked as a full executive director, and right now I'm just the curator. We do have an executive director over me. Okay. And I also have a colleague who is our education coordinator, so we have those three positions within the organization.
Sure. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about, kind of creativity and your leadership roles here. So kind of one of my main themes here is, would you consider yourself a creative person? And I think based on your background and kind of what you've been involved in through your entire career, it sounds like it's certainly, an integral part of your role there.
It's great, and I'm surrounded by creative people. And I would say that I've worked in the in field. My full career has been in the field of the arts. So being creative happens actually at multiple levels, and some of it is transferable, I think, to corporate America or a traditional business sense.
Sure.
In part because I work in not only is it the arts, but it's the not-for-profit.
Yeah.
So we're always being creative because we have to do problem solving in a really creative way because we are, of course, chronically underfunded and understaffed, and it makes for a really creative mindset for problem solving. But also what I do, I never have a really clear plan because I'm never really sure what I'm going to be faced with. I just put up a group exhibition with 80 objects by 25 different artists. And, I had 2 weeks to install the work, but I really didn't know what I was going to get till it got here. So you have to be really flexible in your thinking, which I think is one of the most important aspects of what creativity is. I think people sometimes think creativity is simply the generating of a lot of ideas. And I think what creativity really is an ability to be both fluid and flexible in your ideas, as well as to be able to evaluate the quality of your own ideas and recognize when some of them are bad ideas.
Because, not everything's going to be a home run, I guess, and I appreciate that perspective there, too. Along those lines, that certainly touches on the idea of what creativity means to you.
One other thing I would want to add to that is that I did research when I was in graduate school and also when I was certified to be an art teacher on what is creativity in a academic sense. Like there are measurements of creativity, and it was very interesting to find out that it is a real field of study, that it isn't simply sort of this amorphous thing. It's very real and it's measurable. And people study it, and it's legitimate, and which is probably why you're taking a course in it in graduate school. It is a real thing, and it can. And so I think, and I like that academic definition of creativity.
Sure, and I think that's an important distinction too, to consider how that differs, in academia and everything too. So good. On the lines of leadership, how would you say that you tie in, creativity into leadership roles that you have or that you've had in the past even, and just how you structure your own leadership traits and characteristics?
Okay. I guess, again, it goes back to the fluency of ideas, recognizing that people are very different, and I, of course, have had a career working with some of the more eccentric in the world. So being able to be sensitive to that and to be able to motivate the creative class. That's not something everyone can do. Being a leader in this field probably requires more creativity than in any other field because we oftentimes joke that working with artists is like herding kittens. It's not an easy task, and you're dealing with very diverse personalities. And we have 35 resident artists here as part of my organization. So, and that's a big part of my job is working with those artists and helping to keep them on track and communicating effectively. And that requires a lot of leadership and a lot of creativity, and it's very much interwoven. I have to be accessible as a leader here. I can't come in and be a boss. I have to be and empathetic, and I have to be very much a colleague as well.
Collaborating with people.
So exactly, it's very much a collaborative environment. It's not a top-down. It's where this, and if you do some research about the Buffalo Art Studios, we are a cooperative. So that changes the dynamic a little bit as well.
Okay. Great. No, that's excellent. Another, just kind of sort of related to a lot of that, and kind of what you talked about as far as fostering creativity and just working with different personalities and everything. A question I'm interested in getting your perspective on is, I'll give you both at the same time here. Is creativity a learned or a natural thing, or can you develop that kind of as you go? And the same with leadership. Is that something that's naturally born, or something that you can learn and develop and kind of allow it to flourish a little bit?
I think both of them are both. I do believe in the idea of multiple intelligences. So much as some individuals seem to be natural-born athletes, and others of us seem to be missing that ability. I think that one can work on developing stronger leadership skills, and I certainly think people are oftentimes more creative than they recognize. I think more than many other traits, we tend to try and build a hierarchy of creativity. And I think we, as a culture, fail to recognize how much practice goes into creative processes, and how much failure. And
Yes.
I think that's where sports are a great analogy for creativity.
Right.
That you have to be bad at a lot of things for a long time before you get better. It takes a lot of hours to master something like golf, and you have to try a lot of things. And creativity is like that. Learning how to generate a lot of ideas, and then learning how to evaluate your ideas, and how to and that it's okay to generate a lot of bad ideas. I think that to me, particularly, is my other great cause is the current state of education. I think we're creating a generation of people that think that there's only one right answer. And I don't think that encourages a lot of creativity, because the way to get to the best answer or the best solution oftentimes involves many, many, many bad or lesser solutions.
Yeah.
And if you're afraid to come up with multiples and to work your way through the bad ones, you're never going to get to the best. So I think both things can certainly be cultivated and practiced, and they may come more naturally or more easily to some, and they may be more difficult for others, and some may end up being better at either or both of those things than others, but I absolutely think they can both be practiced and cultivated.
Sure. That reminds me of just a quote of, anyone who's a master at anything had to start somewhere. So, everybody's a beginner at one point in their life, and even if you're the world's greatest artist, you have to start somewhere, and you have to pick up that brush or pen or anything like that for the first time at some point.
And everybody has the places where they're creative, and as I said, I think both can be cultivated, and I think the idea that they're cultivating creativity in students like yourself is really important, because I think it's been almost beaten out of, if not your generation, the students are slightly younger than themselves, it's almost been beaten out of public education, and I think that that's going to create a real intellectual vacuum.
Yeah. That could be a whole nother discussion, I'm sure. But actually, that quote actually, and kind of what's a little bit what you've been touching on, reminds me of, and we've talked before, and I remember you mentioning this to me one time about discussion-based learning and kind of collaborative work and everything too. And you mentioned one thing you like to hear more than anything is when students say, I never thought of it that way. And that's, I don't think you ever realized that, but that's something that stuck with me for a long time, because I think it's a really cool perspective. On the idea of looking through things at different lenses and perspectives and everything, I guess, do you mind touching on a little bit about, how that works within your roles and your organization and everything too?
Trying to expand how people think? Absolutely.
Yeah.
First of all, as a long-time academic, anytime you can encourage people to truly think, not simply to memorize, but to think is a good thing.
Yeah.
Part of what I find as somebody who works in the arts and works with contemporary art is that many people feel that they are somehow not equipped to understand it, so they come in with this mindset that puts them in a place that makes understanding the work very difficult. If I can shift that mindset, it opens up this world of creativity and this world of experience for them.
Yeah.
So I think when I talk about making people think differently, a lot of times it's thinking differently about themselves and what they're able to understand and what they're able to access and appreciate.
Sure.
And very often I find it simply accepting them where they are, whether it's meeting people at the front door with a smile or giving them an entryway so that they feel empowered to interact with the artwork. That's a lot of it. I think that's one of the ways we can help people think differently about themselves and about their own abilities and their own experiences, and open them up to bigger experiences and improve their abilities.
Yes, certainly. Yeah, I think just kind of allowing people to think about those things and just kind of push the boundaries is certainly a big key to a lot of that too. So great. Mm-hmm. Just a couple more questions. I'll let you wrap it up here too. But one thing that I obviously know you're a busy mom too. But what are some creative outlets that you have outside of your work, or that you try and pursue, just to keep things in balance, even, or something like that?
Well, you actually already know the answer to that. It's my garden.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, that is for me. For being busy, as you said, and working at a frantic pace, I really appreciate the slow pace of gardening.
Yeah.
So it's very, very, for me, it's very beautiful. I like the physicality of the work. I like that you're dirty and you're digging, but I really appreciate, and it makes me think differently about myself and about work in general, is that I can't rush it.
Yes, certainly.
And it makes me, and I tend to be a bit of a force of nature, but at the end of the day, that nature, I can't force it. I can't.
Right.
It helps to keep me, like you said, when you say the word balance, it's really a reminder for me of some of the bigger things I need to remember, what I can and can't control, to slow down, and it's all of those things. So it's a very, and I find that many people that work in the arts also are big gardeners.
Sure.
And I think it is that same sort of Zen quality and the peacefulness. And unlike my kids, the flowers don't talk back.
Yeah, so it's probably very therapeutic in a lot of ways.
It really, really is for me. It's absolutely. And it's not highbrow, it's not painting or anything. And I do a little bit of that, but really what I would say is the creative endeavor that I do to sort of recharge is definitely my garden.
Sure, absolutely. I'll go back to your organization. Just one last question here. But do you mind just talking about how your organization structures, its own creative culture, or how it fosters creativity within people, and just in general, kind of the actual structure of your organization? And I know you kind of mentioned it was not necessarily top down or anything too. So
no, we have an executive director, and then an education coordinator, and myself as the curator. But there are no fast lines in what anybody's role is. There's a lot of overlap and a ton of flexibility, and there has to be, and that's partially the nature of an organization our size. But I also think it's a very conscious choice by all three of us. I think we're all creative people who are working in this field, and we're all willing to jump in, and so it works to that regard. And also, we've been doing a lot of restructuring of our physical space, which has involved a lot of creativity and recognizing that we needed to get rid of a lot of clutter. We needed to make things more efficient. So that's absolutely part of our culture of our organization.
Sure.
And then, of course, we, as I said, what's interesting is the physical model of what we do here. What we have is we've got about a quarter of a floor of an industrial building.
Yeah.
And we have a hallway, and then and all around the perimeter are artist studios, which are where we house our 35 artists. And in the center is the gift shop, which also functions as our office. So the three of us are sort of in the physical middle here.
Right.
And it sort of echoes what we do here. We're sort of overseeing, and we have the sort of radial.
Sure, metaphorically and physically in the center of it all there. So.
Correct.
Yeah. Great. Okay, well, absolutely. You touched on a lot of different things that I had in mind there, and that's really helpful information. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for sharing your perspective on these topics and subjects.
Well, no problem, Greg. Always happy to help.
Again, that was Shirley Varico from Buffalo, New York, and I want to take one more chance to thank her for sharing her perspectives and her ideas on what leadership and creativity really do mean to her, and how she approaches them within her own work in the arts, too. I really do like the ideas that she brings to the table on development and flexibility. I think those are really important ideas in creativity and how they're practiced, honed, and developed further, and is a great way to describe how creativity can be cultivated within individuals and then further used, too. Another idea that she brings to the table is resiliency, and I think that's a really important one because it's important to keep on going and just generate new ideas as we look for new ones too, which allows our imaginations to kind of just go uninhibited too. So her experiences within leadership regarding communication and collaboration with different artists, directors, and venues truly show how creativity can be applied in many different facets and within many different responsibilities, as she's shown very clearly too. So with that, I'll let that lead directly into our next interview as well. This one is a joint interview with a husband and wife, Chris and Kristen Schleich. They both live in Peoria, Illinois, which is just a couple hours outside of Chicago. She's originally from Arlington Heights, Illinois, and he is originally from Canton, Ohio, but they both met while they were students at the Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio. So they've been gracious enough to find some time to collaborate in this interview and speak with us together on what creativity means within their own lines of work and how leadership roles have affected them too. So Chris works in engineering for a Fortune 500 company, and Kristen works in various facets teaching yoga, dance, art, and music to all different ages too. So they both have very unique careers that might seem very different on paper, but both really do find ways to bring their own meaning to creativity and leadership. And with that said, I'll let Chris and Kristen both speak on their own responsibilities and roles as we get into our next interview.
Okay, I'll start. My job is I am a technical sales engineer, and what that means is I work with local companies, and most of the companies that I work with are very large equipment manufacturers, and I work with their engineers and their sourcing people to engineer all power transmission products into their machines. And we also try and help solve problems to make their machines as efficient, as light, and as cost-effective as possible. So I get to work with both engineers and purchasing people in my job.
Sure.
My job is a little more complicated. Basically, in the past year, I've probably worked about seven different employers. I went to school for dance, so I have a fine arts degree. And I worked as almost full-time dance instructor when I was in Columbus, Ohio, which was last year before I moved here. And now that I'm here, I'm also a certified yoga teacher. So I'm working more full-time as a yoga teacher here and also teaching art to preschool and elementary age students at a local studio. So art, by meaning I teach anything from drawing to dance, to sculpting, gymnastics. So
excellent.
That's what I do.
Excellent. No, that's great. I appreciate you guys introducing yourselves. And just to kind of, I know I briefed you on this a little bit here, but the idea of creativity, leadership, and imagination and everything too. Do you guys mind speaking a little bit about what creativity and leadership, and maybe even at the same time here, means to you, or even what it means in your career, or how you kind of use that in any leadership roles or anything like that too?
Okay. In my role as I'm a degreed engineer, so I work with a lot of design engineers, and creativity can mean different things depending on who I'm working with. So in the design engineering side, a lot of creativity would be finding new ways to make a machine, find new ways to power it, find a more efficient way to do what you've already been doing with material, with fewer parts. And that takes a lot of creativity and ingenuity to be able to create an entire machine that's, better than the one that you had before. And I also work a lot on the business end of my job as well. And I think that business creativity still requires a lot of the same skills, but it's different in the sense that business creativity is more finding ways to work together with people when people originally try and throw up a roadblock or say something can't be done, or that there are certain things impeding progress, finding a new way to understand the people that you're working with, find a better way to look at a problem differently, to maybe take a new perspective on it, so that way whatever those roadblocks were, you can eliminate them and then move forward and get to a solution that works for both parties, since a lot of my job is negotiating between my customers and my own company.
Sure.
So trying to break down those roadblocks and figure out the most efficient way forward.
So in my job, as a dance instructor, that's all a creative, fine arts-based position. So I work a lot, personally, creating dances, choreographing, and then just creating sequences and ways to teach the children certain steps, maybe building on simpler steps to teach them a more difficult routine.
Sure.
And then as a yoga instructor, that's also, I find a lot of creativity in that too, because I've kind of moved more away from dance and more into yoga in these past few months in Peoria. And then that is teaching, finding new ways to sequence the poses to keep the clients engaged and help them reach their goal for class, whether it be a peak posture, maybe a feeling of peace, calmness, maybe an idea of strength, or, something else that I'm working towards in that class. And then for me, I find that my personal creativity, where I maybe was fulfilled when I was dancing and choreographing, is during my home practice. A lot of times I can find lots of creative sequencing, and then from there I can use that to build classes. And then teaching art class, I mean, teaching sculpting, teaching drawing, a lot of creativity there just within the arts, but also just working with people, like Chris was saying, in business, trying to get people to work together. You have a classroom full of, 25 children. People might fight, they'll be bickering, different personalities clash, and just trying to be that, segueing into leadership, being that leader for that group and finding ways to solve problems to make sure everyone is still behaving and participating and, feeling successful and doing the goal for the class. And especially working on, the body work. I do a lot of work with people moving, especially with yoga, so teaching them how to maybe repattern their bodies or finding a new way to move and being open to that.
Sure.
And that's part of maybe what I do to lead as a leader in my classes. And then for children, you're teaching them other skills as well as teaching them how to be a leader, how to be confident, how to be successful. And, having that open mind themselves will help them eventually maybe grow to be a leader that can inspire others to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So from my perspective, I guess a leadership style, I try and model a lot of what I know about leadership from my current boss. I have a really, really good boss in my job that I have right now. He's a great manager and also a really great leader. And I think what makes him so great is that he, of course, has a lot of experience. He's worked many different roles in the company, so he has lots of different perspectives from which he can look at a problem, both from an internal to our own company perspective, supply chain, manufacturing, business, sales, and whenever we encounter a problem for his direct reports, he always tries to get us all together and we discuss it as a group, and he likes to hear all of our opinions. And then because he's obviously been around and he's seen a lot of events and catastrophes happen over his many years, he will try and pull off of his own experiences. And then for those of us who haven't had those, really expose it to them, tell us what happened when something similar happened in the past, and that perspective that I don't have from my own experiences is great, because he can bring his own experiences to our team and kind of help us kind of phrase it differently, come at it from a different perspective. I mean, he's a creative person as well in terms of problem solving.
Yeah.
But I think experience is also really helpful in that regard.
Sure. And just the idea of collaborating with, people that are on various levels, whether it be people that work under him or people above him, I'm sure that helps in your experience too. Kind of on that idea of kind of what you both touched on, do you mind just talking about the structure of your companies or organizations, on kind of what you've been involved in? Kristen, I know you've been involved in a few different ones now, but just kind of how that's shaped, I guess, the structure of the organization and kind of the leadership roles of various people in the company.
Kristen?
Do you want to go first, Chris? Yours is so much simpler.
The structure of my company is very traditional. I work for a 115-year-old American manufacturing company. So a lot of what people think of in traditional businesses is what my company is kind of founded upon. In the sales role, I work in a regional office, and there are several different regions. And each of the regions usually have a focus on a certain kind of industry that we work with. Each sales office has its own manager. Then there would be a director of sales who oversees all of the management. And then above that, you'd get into vice presidents and presidents But one thing that I think makes my company very successful in the way that it's set up is that it's very accessible for someone like me to talk with the directors, people at like the director level or even above. Sure. I've gotten great exposure to people at the vice president level in my company. Just last week, the director of sales for my entire company was in our office and was able to spend a lot of time with the people who had just started. So I think that even though you do have a very hierarchical structure, which is traditional American companies, being able for the younger people to really experience what they have and converse with these business leaders really helps, goes a long way to making the company that I work for very successful.
Sure. Okay.
The companies that I have worked for in the past year, or I'm currently working, I've worked for a nonprofit, so that was a different kind of structure. We were working actually in collaboration with a bigger nonprofit. So it was a dance outreach program that was under the umbrella of a large ballet company in the city. So working with that and raising funds, so that was a lot of different structures, and then working as a teaching artist underneath all that and juggling a few different hats, because when you work for nonprofit organizations, you generally are doing more than what exactly your job description says.
Sure.
And then I've also worked for other studios, dance studios, other studios, and for the majority, interestingly enough, most of them were run by women. So it's kind of a swing on things in the art world, which was kind of interesting. But they would be very selective in their hiring, because when you are hired a teaching artist, whether it be a yoga instructor or a dance teacher, you're generally by yourself in the classroom with the clients and students. And they have to have that level of trust that that person can deliver what they say they're going to deliver. And you can't always be there all the time. And then in the middle of the class, you can't go and, talk to your employer with a question. You have to problem solve and be creative and figure it out there in the moment when you're dealing with parents or with, other sorts of issues that are going on. But all those, I think, were all those other companies were just normal corporations or LLCs. And it was usually several either independent contractors or through employees. I pretty much worked for any kind of company you can think of.
Sure, absolutely. No, that's very interesting to think about too. On the idea of just leadership and creativity, again, even for you, especially Kristen, something that's through various ages. Do you think leadership and creativity both, possibly in separate roles, are learned, or is that something that is naturally born in individuals?
Well, working with, like yesterday, I just put on a show with a bunch of preschoolers.
Yeah.
And if you ask a preschooler if they're creative or if they're an artist, they will all say yes.
Sure.
And they probably all think they're the best one in the class. They are, because in kindergarten, there's no best artists. They all are drawing stick figures the same way.
Sure.
But then as you get older, people seem to be less creative. And I don't know if that society encourages people, to move towards more of the science or more towards, negative, saying that's not okay. Or maybe it's self-esteem, someone that maybe not everyone really is a good drawer, but it's, so maybe that sort of realization. But I think creativity, everyone's creative. I think everyone's born with a level of creativity because children are so imaginative.
Yeah.
And maybe some people are more than others. Like the great artists of the world, they had something special.
Absolutely.
Michelangelo, something special. But, the great musicians of the world, they have a little extra something that's keeping their fire alive. But when it comes to leadership, I think that's probably something people are more born with, a trait that they have. Chris and I recently took some personality tests. It was like the Myers-Briggs? What's it called?
I believe so.
Yeah, and there's like 16 different personalities that have been like tested over and over and over again. And some people are more predispositioned to be leaders and stand up in front of a group and lead, whereas some people that's the last thing that they would ever want to do, and they're more successful and feel more self-fulfilled being like the task person, getting something else done, or being the behind-the-scenes sort of person. And I think, at least for me, I didn't realize that I maybe had qualities of being a leader until much later.
Uh-huh.
Maybe like in college, I was told in high school, Kristen, you're a leader, and I'd be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. But then it would start to come out in other situations as a choreographer or as leading a group project. No one steps up to be the organizer, and I'm just like, all right, well, I guess I'll do it.
Yeah.
And just naturally fall into that sort of role. And I do think leadership can be honed because it is a skill.
Yeah.
But I feel like if someone doesn't have that predisposition to do it, it's a much harder road.
Absolutely.
To learn how to be a leader, especially if that's not something that you come by naturally.
Sure.
But any leader can become a better leader through practice or through learning or through reading or, whatever.
Experience, the whole deal there. It all contributes.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with a lot of what Kristen said. I think that some people may inherently be more inclined to lean towards being a leader in certain situations than other people might. But for people who are genuinely interested in taking a bigger role in either a project or a company or something in their personal life, it's absolutely possible for anyone to become more of a leader. And I think that the way that you do that is by taking more chances and learning from those who have more experience than you, who have done it before, and the people who are around you who are leaders. I think that by observing what they do, people who are successful in your life, either if it's in your work or if it's in some other role of your life, just by observing what they do and learning from them, talking with them and learning from their mistakes, and just going out there and doing it yourself, you can absolutely learn a whole lot about doing whatever it is that you're trying to do, business, something on the side. Otherwise, you can absolutely learn to be a better leader.
Sure. Okay, well, just a couple more questions here, but one of them, and you can keep this real simple if you want to, but what are maybe just a couple or three qualities that are core values of your organization that are either written or unwritten that you've just seen in your experience?
My company actually does publish their core values. And now you're going to challenge me. The most important one for my company is ethics and integrity. And that's one of the reasons why I was really drawn to my company. If it's something that is questionable ethically, it's not something that we do. And it's not a way that anybody in our organization would conduct themselves, or else they don't stay in our organization very well.
Yeah.
So ethics and integrity. Another is innovation. So obviously, if you want to be at the head of an industry, and that kind of goes along with being creative, you have to come up with new ways of doing things and innovate from a product standpoint. I would come up with new things to make, better ways to do it. And from a sales perspective, we're always coming out with new ideas, new ways to try and reach our customers. So that's another core value of ours.
Yeah.
And another one of our key values is excellence. Excellence is a core value of my company. Yeah. And I think that that's really summed up with we're always working towards a common goal, and if everyone in the company can be working towards a common goal, making it as efficient and effective as possible, operating with a high level of excellence can absolutely be attained. You always want to be striving for the best, and if everyone in your company has that high standard, then the entire company is going to be one of the best in its industry.
Sure.
For our company, from the leadership on down.
Yeah, success breeds success. That makes sense.
Well, for the nonprofit I worked for in Columbus, we taught inner city school kids, like I said before. So we were very much less about them learning to be great dancers and more about teaching them life skills. Yeah. So we had a chant for them, and it was said, do hard, work hard, do your best, never give up, be fit, and strive for excellence. Yeah. So those were things that we embodied as a company, not only as teachers or as, development managers, but also teaching our students. And I think, very simple terms, so that they can relate to children, but also, there's something to be said with simplicity also for adults.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I'll tell you what, I'll ask you...
We're still recording, right, Craig?
Yeah, we are. I'll just ask you one last question here. And outside of your work and responsibilities there, what is a creative outlet that you guys pursue, whether it be together or as individuals, that you might use just, again, outside of your work?
We recently got a piano, and I play piano, so I've been getting back into playing. But before then, I've had a guitar with me probably for the past,
6, 8 years, almost anywhere I go or move to. So I've been playing guitar.
Sure.
And then just like as I said earlier, in my yoga practice right now, that's a creative outlet. And it used to be, when I was dancing more, I was definitely doing choreography or dancing with my students and coming up with phrase work and just routines for them.
Yeah.
It's a good creative outlet for me. Although it was within work, I did it a lot of times outside of the classroom.
Okay, great.
To that.
Yeah.
I'll kind of bounce off of that. From high school, actually from elementary school on through high school, music is a really important part of my life. I played the trumpet for a very long time. And now that I've kind of moved into the working world and I'm living in an apartment, the trumpet is a less accessible instrument than it once was when I was in the band. Since we recently gotten a piano, music was always something that was really important to me. I'm very familiar with it. I know how to read music. So I'd like to start picking up the piano, and who knows, maybe Kristen and I will start to combine that creativity together. She'll play the guitar, I'll play the piano, and we'll do some duets or something.
Sure. Always fun to kind of collaborate together, too. That's great. Well, yeah, I really appreciate you guys talking with me here, and thanks for your time. And, again, I appreciate you sharing your perspectives, too.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
Yep.
Thank you, Greg.
Again, that was Chris and Kristen Schleich from Peoria, Illinois. I want to really thank them for coordinating their schedules and speaking together on the differences and similarities between their lines of work. I really like the ideas that they brought up, both regarding finding solutions through problem solving and finding new ways of looking at different problems too. Very interesting to see how both of their lines of work have very different structures in the way that they're organized, but a lot of overlap in the structures in the way that they're both operated too. So both touched on the idea of how important communication is in leadership and teaching both, and I loved Chris's connections to integrity and innovation, and Kristen's connection to engaging others through your own leadership practices too. Great perspectives on how these traits can be applied and used. So that leads us into our final interview of the day. This discussion is with a man named Michael Harding. He works in trading and investments for a Fortune 200 company in downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've known Mike for a few years as we both met while attending Washington and Jefferson College, which is about an hour south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Mike was born and raised in the western Pennsylvania region and is very involved in the community that he lives and works in now. He is also a founding board member of a locally founded charity that recognizes and celebrates birthdays for underprivileged children. So with that being said, I'll let that lead straight into our final interview as we hear Mike's perspectives on leadership, creativity, and really just what that means to him and how it fits into his own organization too.
Hi, so my name's Mike. I actually met Greg through college, we were roommates, and I, out of school, took a job with Bank of New York Mellon in downtown Pittsburgh. It's in their trade operations department. Been there about 2.5 years now, and day-to-day kind of working with the team there as well as, whatever tasks were given. I definitely don't think I ever dreamt of a career in operations, that's for sure. Definitely think it was one of those types of situations where I did take an internship with BNY my junior year of college, and that led to an opportunity for full-time, and you know what, it's actually worked out really well. It's definitely fast-paced, every day is different, client expectations, team expectations, a lot of stuff to juggle, but that being said, every day is different, so it's kind of afforded me the opportunity to kind of, be a little more dynamic. So I think it's definitely not my lifelong career, but it's definitely, it's been a good starting point, I think.
Great. Excellent. So some of the things that I know I kind of briefed you on a little bit was talking about, I guess, the balance of leadership, creativity, and how that all ties in with imagination, everything like that. So first question, would you describe yourself as a creative person, or do you see yourself as a creative person?
It's hard to answer that. I think for me, creativity can be measured in really any way. Do I consider myself a creative person? Maybe. I think so. Maybe more so than some, but
sure.
Definitely not the most creative. I think for me, I define creativity as, just a different way to get something done. Or, you know, a lot of people think immediately of creativity as, you know, arts, ballet, and dance. And, you know, that's so foreign to me that while I think those people are creative, I define it more as, you know, how can you get through your day-to-day a little bit more fun and maybe just a little bit more efficient? And what creative ways can you do that?
Yeah.
So I think for me, from like a business standpoint, I'm currently in a role where, you know, I'm not really managing a team, but I am overseeing their workflows, and just kind of different people's takes on getting the tasks done are actually really creative. You know, if you hand 3 people the same task, I can almost guarantee 3 of those teammates are going to attack it differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's a version of creativity that I see in my day-to-day.
Yeah, and actually, I know some things that you've even just told me in the past are incentives that you've given employees, or just given them a way to kind of look at their responsibilities differently. For example, like rewarding them based on productivity for the work. Do you mind touching on a couple of things like that you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important people first is my biggest thing at work. And I think, you know, everyone's coming into work to obviously, you know, get the job done and obviously have a paycheck to finance their life, or else why would we go to work? But I think for me, it's important to, you know, you're spending so much time with these people, you might as well enjoy it. So incentives are fun, and that doesn't always have to be monetary. It could even just be, you know, a lunch, where recently in the accounting team that we interface with daily, we didn't really know a lot of them, so we just kind of organized a kind of Chipotle catering day, and everyone had to go around the room, you know, 2 truths and a lie. And it just kind of was an off-the-cuff moment where people were able to, you know, have some fun with it and have some, you know, good food in the office while meeting new people. And I think, you know, that's probably an atypical take on a corporate lunch.
Sure.
But it was a lot of fun, and I think everyone kind of put their own spin on things. And I think once you jumpstart conversation, you know, it's amazing what people come up with. So that's one example. I think really just kind of having, you know, team building activities. Like, we do a lot of stuff in the office to keep morale up. You know, we did a door decorating contest. We basically said, decorate your unit manager's door however you see fit. And I mean, it's insane with no limits what people will do. One was a completely over the top, like, zombie land, and we had, you know, witch mart and like all kinds of different things. But it's really cool when you task people with that stuff. You know, collaboration and creativity can do insane things. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I love the ideas you're touching on with collaborating, and then also kind of tying that in with relationship building, and you can kind of build off of that too. I guess that kind of leads into a bit of an abstract question here, just to get your own perspective on this. And I'll tie in both of these at once here. But just in anything that comes to mind here, what would you say creativity means to you, and then also what leadership means to you too? And even if there's some overlap in that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, just those of them separate maybe and then together, but I think creativity for me, again, it's just something, it's like use or create. It's different for everyone. If you're an artist, then it's something, you know, how do you make that canvas come alive? If you're an athlete, it's how do you make yourself better to hit that mark? And I think if, you know, you're not one of those things, or maybe just the average Joe who's working at Target, I think creativity is anything. It could be, you know, how fast can you get those people checked out through your line? Or, you know, if you're at work, what's a creative and fun way to, you know, get your deliverables with a client without, you know, just, you know, pressing play and doing the same thing every day. You know, creativity also can drive efficiency. I see that a lot in at least my line of work. But I also think creativity can literally be, you know, making your own beer. As I sit here for this interview, actually, I cracked open my first brew, and, you know, having some fun with that. Like, you're given some instructions, but maybe you deviate from them a little bit and kind of put your own spin on something.
Sure.
I think for me, a lot of times, my creativity comes best from like a project management type. Like, maybe someone has an idea, but I'm really better at the execution and the seeing of the idea. So maybe that's more the logic-minded person. I think I'm less with the idea generation and more with the idea execution. And I think that's why collaboration is so important, because if Lauren has a great idea about something, maybe I know how to get us there, and then somebody else knows how to finish it off. It's kind of, you know, there's different ends of the spectrum there that I think are important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that was the first part. The second part leadership to me, I think a lot of times, especially in corporate America, people get caught up in titles, and I don't think that a title determines leadership qualification actually at all.
Right.
I think some of the best leaders don't even have titles, and I think it's important that people, it goes both ways. Obviously, people with great titles are great leaders, but there's also people with great titles that are horrible leaders.
Right.
But I think that's sometimes lost in the mix, where if someone's a vice president, they're assumed to be a terrific leader, and that's just really not accurate from what I've seen. And I think, some people who are entry level have the potential to be maybe the best leaders, but they're just not there yet.
Uh-huh.
So I think one thing to note is that it's not always driven by a title. And two, I think leadership is something that I think you just have to be really selfless. I think you have to be able to understand that it's not a dictatorship, and you have to be confident in that if you're not there, and if you're able to let somebody else speak and give their opinion, that ultimately that actually is not only better for the group, but better for you as a leader, because it gives you insight to what other people are thinking.
Right.
I think open-mindedness and just security with yourself and not thinking that your idea is always the best is just a huge problem I see in at least corporate America with some leaders. So I think that's something to think about.
Certainly. I think those are some great ideas there. And actually that kind of leads, especially with your idea on titles there, into a question I was also interested in getting some of your own thoughts on was, is leadership something that is naturally born for some people, or can it be learned or developed? And then same thing for creativity. Is that naturally learned or naturally born in for some specific people, or is that also something you could develop as well?
I think it's a little bit of both, for both. I know I'm straddling the line here on a lot of these questions, but
no
I really think, for me, I think everyone is innately creative. I think it's just unwrapping that creativity in some people and challenging them brings it out. I think, I'm not a painter, but if I'm given a canvas, I'm probably going to come up with a cool way to at least interpret it my way. And I think so with the next pair of mine and so with the next pair of mine.
Sure.
But I wouldn't probably wake up every Tuesday wanting to paint. I think that's kind of a really boxed-in example, but I think everyone is innately creative. Everyone is like they're defining. It's just how they express it and how often they get to express it. And so clearly somebody with a profession in the arts is, from societal view, going to be more creative, but really the welder in the machine shop could be as equally creative. It's just their line of work is a different interpretation of creativity.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. Leadership, I think, is a little different. I think not everyone is naturally born a leader. I think especially just the little team that I work on, the 6 of us definitely have 6 different personalities, which is great. It's terrific to have different viewpoints, but there are definitely some people that are 100% comfortable, kind of following status quo and waiting for the next instruction, and that's fine. They're great employees, but they're not really ones to maybe run with a task and own it as much as others.
Right.
And then there are some people, and myself included in this box, where I am by and large type A, and I'll openly admit that sometimes to a fault, but I think that type A-ness comes from almost like a naturally born, I really think this is how we should take the direction of this, or just I see where everyone's headed here, let's just take it to the finish line. I see that a lot with, even organizing those extracurriculars, we want to do this, but we hope someone will logistically work out all the details, and I find myself kind of putting that hat on a lot. So I think, it's both ways. I don't think everyone has natural born leadership, but I think everyone has, self-discipline to some extent. It's just how far do you go with that? And I definitely can say, at least from my college and professional career, that there are some slackers. I mean, right? Not just how this world works.
Yeah.
But there's also the overachievers, too, and I think it's a good balance. I think you kind of do need both, but I could definitely see where friction can become apparent between the 2 types there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. Another question I had was, do you mind talking a little bit about the structure of your organization, whether it be various people's roles, people under you or people above you, and then also what allows you to kind of do what you can do too with anything from creativity to flexibility. Like I know, as you mentioned, you've taken on various roles for certain projects. Again, kind of the structure of your organization and then kind of what you're able to do with that too.
So, I mean, it's the Bank of New York Mellon, right? It's definitely an old money bank, and I mean, I think everyone's first impression is, you know, stuffy Wall Street. I mean, while we're definitely not Google, and I'm not trying to claim that we are, free lunches, but I will say that they're very progressive, and they're working more and more towards trying to develop this culture of, you know, let's wear khakis, jeans on Friday, we're laid back, let's, you know, get involved in the community, let's have group lunches. I think that's extremely important to this generation if you want to acquire the quote-unquote good talent.
Yeah.
You know, we went to a liberal arts college where that is really one of my primary check marks. Like, I want to be able to check that box. I don't want the, you know, suit and tie stuffy workplace as much as our previous generation did. And with that being said, I mean, we're hierarchical to an extent. So, you know, there's entry level, senior, team lead, supervisor, and then the hierarchy goes up from there, at least for our unit, our business line. But there's a lot of collaboration, even all the way up to the unit manager level. I have great exposure daily to someone who's, you know, 3 runs ahead of me on the ladder, but that to me is really awesome because you're able to kind of get their viewpoint and maybe use them as a mentor and things like that, which I really have been able to kind of, you know, pick their brain on stuff. And I've liked that opportunity a lot. I don't know that I could have had that elsewhere. So that's been cool.
Yeah.
But, you know, that being said, it's also hierarchical, and, you know, sometimes people assume if they sit in a chair long enough, they move up to the next rung, and that's not always the case, which I'm actually happy that that's not the case. I think you should try and, you know, everyone's going to work. I think what else? You know, just like college, everyone's going to school to learn. What else? I think that's important to not lose sight of that. Everyone wanted to bolster their resume for that first job. Just because you have it doesn't mean you should stop now. And I think that's really important. That is, what was the second part? I'm sorry.
Oh, just talking, if you don't mind just kind of discussing some of the involvement you've been able to do outside your primary responsibilities.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, I always say it, I know it's cheesy, but whistle while you work is so important. The dwarves had it right. I mean, it's one of those things where if you come in every day and just, you know, answer client deliverables, you're a good employee. But if you come in every day and you think outside the box and what else can we get our hands dirty with, and that makes you a great employee. And I think it makes it a great organization when they recognize that because, you know, and that fosters that creativity since that's our topic here. But, you know, I have had the opportunity to, on the team building committee, organize, you know, a kind of group-wide event. So we did the tailgate this summer for the Pirates game, and we had almost 80 people attend that, which was really cool. And, you know, everyone from management level to entry level is, you know, eating burgers and kind of hanging out before a Pirates game that, you know, the company pretty much paid for because we were willing to organize it. So I think that is a really cool opportunity, you know, working out logistics and talking with other managers on what time's good for their teams and things like that. You know, 1, gets me exposure, but 2, just gets a lot of people on the same page and at the same event that they typically, you know, may not have gone to.
Sure.
So that was a cool one. We've also done, I was able to kind of, you know, be a real pain in the ass, I guess you could say, to get WBEZ on the short list. Again, Mellon, a lot of people there, so you kind of chip away at the old iceberg sometimes, but WBEZ was obviously near and dear to my heart, and as an alum, I wanted to try and give back, and I think one of the ways was getting Mellon to actually recruit on campus this fall, which has never been done, so that was kind of fun, and now we're going to go back in March to set up some interviews.
Sure.
You know, so kind of leading that charge, talking to the right people, and actually some of the people I met at that tailgate, ironically enough, were able to, you know, help put that together, and, you know, now WBEZ is becoming a list on the short list there, which, you know, is twofold. I think that's great for both obviously WBEZ and Mellon, but that's also great for me to kind of, as an alum, be like, yeah, this is awesome. Connecting dots is what this is all about. So, you know, if I can give other people these opportunities, why not?
Yeah.
So
Certainly.
I think that is has been really cool, and I think that I guess I'm lucky to have had those opportunities because I don't know that, you know, only being with a short 10-year career, only, less than 3 years here, but I think that was kind of cool to be able to be allowed, I guess, to do that.
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that's a great opportunity to, like you said, I think a cool term that you used was connect the dots there, of kind of combining a lot of different things that you've been involved in, and then kind of hopefully building towards the future there too. So, excellent.
Sure.
Actually, that kind of spins off into probably the final question I have here of what do you do outside of your work that you would describe as maybe a creative outlet, or something that you like to do to kind of kind of stimulate that creativity within yourself?
Whoa, we better be careful with these questions. All right. I think for me that is maybe answered in a PC way, but I really think that for me, I love to be involved with charity. I always have, and I really think, no matter what, I think it's important to realize that if you have a lot, you should really give a lot. And I think people, our generation especially, are seeing that more and more, which I'm hoping continues. But, I think charity's always been close to me, so I'm able, fortunately, to sit on the board of a nonprofit, Beverly's Birthdays, and, founded here in Pittsburgh. We're going to turn 3 in February, and, our mission is to give birthdays to underprivileged children in the area, and I think that is, by and large, one of my look forward to type of things. Sure. I just went to a party last week in McKeesport, and, it was insane, the joy that these kids get. They're going through hell, really, and, they're getting one night to feel that they're just the bomb.com, and I think that's awesome. This girl opened part of her gift, and it was just, honestly, a bag of wonderful pistachios, and she was 10 years old, and she could not have been more excited. Those were her favorite brands, she said, and she loved them so much, and she couldn't believe it. And why am I not excited about pistachios? What am I doing wrong? It's almost how I look at that, because here's someone getting, what is considered by most probably a very minuscule gift, but it just made her day.
Yeah.
And, I really like that, and I think that if that's that easy to do, why aren't we getting more of it?
Sure. No, I think that's a great way to stay involved, and a good way to give back, really, and kind of take on a leadership role in terms of making sure that other people have privileges as well. So that's a great way to balance out your own work, even too. So, thank you.
Definitely.
Well, I'll wrap it up here, but I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with us, and I really appreciate you sharing your perspectives and kind of the lens that you look at creativity, leadership, and kind of how they combine each other within your own life too. So thanks for your time, and appreciate your contributions here.
Definitely. I think this was fun.
Again, that was Michael Harding from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I want to thank him for taking the time to describe his experiences and what creativity and leadership means within his own workplace and how he's built that into his own brand of leadership too. So Mike has used some really good analogies to touch on the importance that team building plays within his roles and how communication plays a large role in those leadership responsibilities too. I really appreciated his ideas on creativity and how this can be used to manage team members and find different ways of getting tasks done. I think an important thought that Mike brought up was how he views creativity as a way to really push your limits just a little bit further and expand your personal and professional boundaries. This shows an interesting perspective on how creativity can be applied to a very traditional workplace and how it has taken progressive steps to allow individuals to respond, adapt, and learn how to best manage their own work too. So these ideas show how relationships across different levels help get work done and shows how people can work together to stimulate creativity and different solutions to lead through projects together too. I really appreciate all of our guests taking the time to think about and discuss their own experiences and share their own perspectives on leadership and creativity so that we can see how all these ideas can tie back together and have their own meaning for each of us too. It really is very interesting to see how we can all look at creativity differently, but also use it in such effective ways in our personal and professional lives. I think a way of looking at this is that we can all become our own architects too. We can choose how to construct and expand our own experiences to build new approaches to our day-to-day lives too. This, to me, shows a true meaning of seeing and seeing again. Through this idea of seeing and seeing again, we learn further about how creativity is more than just thinking outside the box, and how it can have personal meaning to each of us too. Each person has their own unique way of combining leadership, creativity, culture, and personality into their own brand that they carry with them in their everyday personal and professional endeavors. Each person also has their own creative outlets and chooses to express themselves in their careers, but also outside of their career too. We spoke with Shirley that enjoys gardening, which is also very different than her career in the arts. Chris and Kristen that are both involved in music, quite different than their careers in engineering and also in yoga and dance instruction. Mike that is involved in a local charity that helps underprivileged children, quite different than his career in banking too. All of these creative outlets are forms of expression that can be described as very different than their careers, but also help stimulate their own form of seeing and seeing again. The idea of problem solving, finding that next right answer, and coloring outside the lines is what really helps us expand our perspectives and show us what we are truly capable of. To build off of this idea of creativity and leadership, I have one last clip that I want to share with you from a presentation given by Dr. Tina Seelig, where she shares her thoughts on creativity. Dr. Seelig is a professor at Stanford University in California, and she discusses a book that she authored called Ingenious, a crash course on creativity. She shares her perspective and even relates the idea back to imagination and draws an important conclusion about creativity. Here are a few thoughts that she has and her key insights on her perspective on creativity.
My goal is to help students figure out how to come up with the big ideas and then bring them to life. Now, I've been doing this for about 14 years, and I want to tell you a secret. I decided I wanted to write a book on creativity a few years ago, and I started a file on my computer, and the file said, "Not another book about creativity." It's like, not one more book, or this is not going to be just one more book. And I sold the idea basically with the name, which is Ingenious, and so the title was good enough that my publisher said that, yes, let's do it. But I got to the end of the first draft, and I realized, you know what? It was just one more book about creativity. So I started over, and I started over, and I started over, until finally I realized I was looking at the material through much too tight a focus, and I needed to open up the lens and look at the creative process and the process of bringing ideas to life through a very, very different perspective. And I created a model which I call the innovation engine. And what I'm going to do is, over the next few minutes, take it apart and put it back together, and I hope you agree with me that this is a really interesting way at looking at how do you come up with ideas and how do you actually bring them to life. Now, when you look at the innovation engine, you'll notice there's some things that are sort of the obvious place that you would start if you're talking about creativity. You would typically start with thinking about imagination, right? Okay, now we're all imaginative when we're kids, okay? We all go to school, we come up with really interesting things when we're in kindergarten, and over time, we start seeing that creativity and our sense of confidence in our creativity dwindling. Why is that? It's because a lot of the questions we get asked in school are like this. What is the sum of 5 plus 5? Now, what's the answer to this question? Great, okay, come on, say it louder. 10, okay. We know it's 10 because there's one right answer to this problem. And unfortunately, the more we go in school, the more we get questions like this. Wherein was, whatever, what's the number, Avogadro's number? Okay, you might get to be more complicated questions, but there's only one right answer. Really creative people don't look at the world like this. They look at problems through different lenses, and they reframe the problem. For example, instead of teaching math like what's the sum of 5 plus 5, you could ask a question like this. What two numbers add up to 10? How many answers are there to this? How many answers? A lot. Okay, how many a lot? Infinite number, right? Negative number, fractions. This is critically important because often the answer is baked into the question you ask. And so if you don't question the questions you're asking, you're not going to come up with really innovative solutions. So creativity can be enhanced by reframing problems, connecting, combining ideas, and by challenging assumptions. But you know what? This is not enough. This is not enough, and it's certainly not enough if you want to really make things happen, because you need to start with a base of knowledge. Knowledge is the toolbox for your imagination. The more you know, the more you have to work with. Think about it. If I want to come up with a brand new solar car or a cure for cancer, I need to know something about engineering and biology. I need something to work with. And so how do we get knowledge? Well, of course, you can come and listen to talks, you can read books, but one of the most powerful ways to get knowledge about the world is by paying attention. So we have imagination, we have knowledge, but there's another important part of your innovation engine, and that is your attitude. If you are not driven, motivated, and have the confidence that you can solve your problem, you will not solve it. It is not easy. It's not easy to come up with really big ideas, and it's certainly not easy to bring them to life. Unfortunately, most people see themselves as puzzle builders. This means they kind of have their box top, and they know what the picture looks like, and they know where they're trying to get, but here's the problem. What happens if you're a puzzle builder and you're missing a piece in the puzzle? What happens? You can't finish the puzzle. You're stuck. You said to your boss, sorry, that part is out of stock, okay? You say, sorry, we can't get there. True innovators, true entrepreneurs are not puzzle builders. They're quilt makers. They take all the things they have at their disposal, all the things, even if they're kind of strange and surprising, and they figure out how to leverage them to make amazing things happen. This is really important. You need to see yourself as a quilt maker as opposed to a puzzle builder. So now we have the inside of your innovation engine. And let me tell you how this works. It's really quite simple. Your knowledge is a toolbox for your imagination. Your imagination is the catalyst for the transformation of that knowledge into new ideas. And your attitude is a spark that gets it going. But here's the problem. What is culture? Culture is something that infuses an entire organization. One of the most important aspects of culture is how we deal with failure. Now, I have to tell you, I don't like the word failure because as a scientist, when I do things that have surprising results, what do you call that? You call it data, okay? And when you're a scientist and you get data that isn't expected, that's actually where the most interesting things happen, is when you get things that are unexpected. You can mine that and come up with some really, really interesting inventions and ideas. Culture is like the background music of any organization. It is so powerful. Think about it. When you go to see a movie and there's music, it tells you whether you should be in, whether it's suspenseful or romantic scene. It actually tells you how to feel. That none of these things stand alone. They all affect each other. And without one, the others can't function. The culture is the collective attitudes of the individuals, and every individual contributes to that culture, and of course, we're all affected by the ambient culture of the organization. The fact is, this innovation engine is so powerful, and we each have the key to our own innovation engine. And I invite each of you to turn it.
These ideas by Dr. Seelig are a perfect supplement to the discussions that we have had to help us learn further about what leadership and imagination can mean and how we can all weave our own experiences into a way of solving the problems around us. As we have found, there are so many different directions that we can take when we imagine and think about what it means to be creative, and further, to apply that to our leadership skills. Leadership is seen progressively by many of the people that we spoke to today as a collaborative effort to help operate effectively alongside those around us and not strictly as a self-serving tool. Creativity applied to leadership can mean thinking critically about how we solve a problem at hand, how to communicate with the people that we work with, how to be flexible with the generation of ideas, how to negotiate with potential customers, how to teach a certain dance step to a first grader, how to balance conflict with teaching directions, how to serve those that we work with while delivering to the client, how to use imagination with the everyday tasks that we are faced with, how to develop and structure culture within our workplace, or, of course, how to see and see again through a new lens that pushes us beyond our limits. Most importantly, I think we can see that much of what we are all learning about with our leadership and creativity is that it is a continual process. When moving from point A to point B, our position between A and B, or our not A, is the valley where we learn and develop as leaders, which helps us the most and provides experience to enrich our journey and move us closer to point B. This is our transformational process. We can also continually help structure our own organizations, which allows us to construct our own bridges and archways and use our imagination to balance and stabilize the archways for those that we lead. Some are well thought out and beautifully designed, while some are crumbling crevices that require us to strategize whether our leadership and creativity is taking us in the right directions. In other ways, we must use our moral imagination to see where our creativity makes the most sense for us. This requires us to reflect and process the decisions that we make and how those will be perceived by others. Lastly, I think our creativity helps us see the extraordinary in the ordinary. Learning about how we think of creativity helps us understand the inner working of our brain and how we communicate and collaborate, whether it be direct or indirect, strong or light, sudden or sustained, bound or free, as described through Laban's efforts. All of these ideas relate back to organizational leadership and how we use creativity to express ourselves and find ways to interact with the people around us and make sense of the experiences that we are faced with. All of this helps us process and engage in a moral awareness of what creativity and leadership means to us. This idea helps us in our reflections by showing us new possibilities that we can creatively lead forward. I hope that the perspectives shared by the people on this program today helped you see through a new and different lens on what creativity and leadership can mean to different people within their own individual roles, responsibilities, and lives. So the next time someone asks you, do you consider yourself a creative person? Think about how you define that in your own way. Think about how you view your own leadership style and how you understand creativity within yourself, so that you can help yourself and help others shape new perspectives to see and see again. Our program today was written and produced by Greg French for Gonzaga University and for the Organizational Leadership Department. A special thanks to my classmates who have journeyed through this class with me and to the professors that have taught this material and shared their own perspectives so that we could build our own. My greatest gratitude goes out to the 4 people that I interviewed, Shirley Varico, Chris and Kristen Schleich, and Michael Harding. As well, a second thank you goes out to Chris and Kristen Schleich for being patient with my recording equipment as I was having issues recording our conversations the first time. Music for this program came from a song called You and Me by Kings of Convenience, portion of Dr. Tina Seelig's presentation entitled The 6 Characteristics of Truly Creative People came from 99U and was published on YouTube on February 6th, 2014. I'm Greg French. Thanks for tuning in and have a great day.